Sometimes the biggest historical mysteries are hiding in plain sight, like right inside a single word. Today, we're going to do a little detective work on an ancient Christian heresy. But forget about dusty scrolls or digging through old ruins. Our first clue, our only clue to start with, is the word itself. So, where does this investigation begin? Well, we're heading to Ethiopia, to the ancient language of Ge'ez. Now, this isn't just any language. It's the sacred tongue of one of the world's oldest Christian traditions, and it holds the first piece of our puzzle. All right, the word we're looking at is misalam. Now, on the surface, its meaning seems pretty simple, right? It's actually quite beautiful. It just means one who prays, a term of pure devotion. But as you're about to see, there's so much more hiding behind that simple definition. Okay, but here's where it starts to get really interesting. See, Masalam isn't originally a Ge'ez word at all. It was actually borrowed directly from Syriac, which is a dialect of Aramaic. And in Syriac, the word is Masaliana. And guess what? It means the exact same thing, one who prays. So right away, we've got this clear linguistic bridge between the ancient churches of Syria and Ethiopia. And believe me, this is where the story starts to take a very dark turn. So what if this simple devotional word for someone who prays was also the name of a forgotten heresy? Because that Syriac word, Maseliana, is the direct root of another name, Maselian. And the Maselians? Well, they were accused of being one of the most dangerous heretical movements in the entire early church. Okay, so what was the big deal? I mean, they're just the praying people, right? Well, according to the church authorities back in the 4th century, the Massalians were pushing some really dangerous ideas. And the accusations were, well, they were pretty wild. The Massalians supposedly believed that every single person is born with a demon living inside them, right alongside their soul. And get this, they believed that the official church sacraments, things like baptism or communion, were totally useless against it. Nope. They taught that the only way, the only thing that could get rid of this demon was constant, intense, personal prayer. Now, this wasn't just some minor theological squabble. This was a direct challenge to the church's entire authority structure. I mean, think about it. If all you needed for salvation was your own personal prayer, then who needs priests? Who needs bishops? Who needs all the formal sacraments? You can see exactly why the establishment saw this as a massive threat. Which brings us right back to Ethiopia. If this whole controversial movement kicked off in Syria, how on earth did its name, and, supposedly its ideas, make their way all the way to the Horn of Africa? Well, the connection, it turns out, was forged by monks. We're talking about these legendary figures known as the 9 Saints. The story goes that they traveled from Syria to Ethiopia, and they brought with them this really intense, ascetic version of Christianity. This kind of desert spirituality, focused on hardcore, rigorous prayer, became a central part of what it meant to be a monk in Ethiopia. And for a long, long time, that was pretty much the accepted story. Case closed, right? But not so fast. Recently, modern scholars have gone back to the evidence and they've come up with a huge plot twist. What if the Massalians never actually existed? At least not as a single organized group. Yeah, this insight from the scholar Carlos Segovia basically flips the whole story on its head. He argues that Massalian wasn't a name these people ever used for themselves. It was what he calls a polemical label. In other words, it was an insult, a weaponized word used by powerful bishops to marginalize and crush any ascetic groups that they just couldn't control. So this modern critique really boils down to 3 key things. First, the term Massalian was basically just a derogatory catch-all for any group that didn't toe the line with the bishops. Second, there's pretty much zero evidence that these scattered communities were all part of some big, unified sect. And third, slapping this external label onto unique local traditions, especially in a place like Ethiopia, just completely ignores what was actually going on there. To put it simply, it was like a political smear campaign. The label wasn't meant to describe who these people were, it was meant to discredit them. It was a political weapon, plain and simple, designed to shut down any form of spirituality that didn't fit neatly under the bishop's control. Okay, so if Massalianism wasn't some real coherent heresy that spread to Ethiopia, what does that mean for our original clue? What does that word, misalam, really tell us? Well, when we put misalam back into its proper context, It turns out it wasn't a suspicious outlier at all, not even close. It was just one of many core religious words that Ethiopian Christianity borrowed from Syriac. I mean, we're talking about words for fundamental concepts like faith, prayer, even Ark of the Covenant and the Torah. They all came from the same Aramaic and Syriac source. So what this really shows us is that the true story here isn't about some dangerous heresy spreading across the ancient world. It's actually something much more fascinating. It's a story about a deep, rich, foundational connection between two of the world's oldest Christian cultures, a connection built on a shared language of faith. That word, Masalam, it wasn't a clue to a heresy after all. It was a sign of friendship, of a shared heritage. And that really leaves us with one last question to think about. The whole case of Massalianism is a perfect example of how easily a label can be used not to understand people, but to condemn them. And it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? If these historical labels were so often just weapons in disguise, what about the labels we use today?